and gentlemen, welcome back to a brand new episode of At the Buzzer Sports, where we talk all things basketball all the time. I am your host, John Drummond. If you guys like consistent basketball conversations throughout the week, make sure you hit that subscribe button and make sure you turn on that notification bell to let you know when you get your regular, consistent videos from John Drummond, the host of At the Buzzer Sports. Now, today, we're going to be talking about the 2025 NBA draft class, just because I believe that this is one of the deeper classes we have had in a while. I think there is a lot of talent all around this draft, whether it's throughout the lottery or mid-round or late round, early second round. I believe there is a lot of talent in this 2025 NBA draft class. So, outside of my regular NBA mock draft videos, we're going to start diving a little bit deeper into these prospects so you guys can get to know them just a little bit more, like their tendencies, what they're good at, their percentages, and things like that. So in this episode, we are going to be ranking the top 5 scorers in the 2025 NBA draft. And when I put together this list is based on how they're scoring right now and how I think it can convert into the NBA. So some of you guys may think this player is a better scorer than the next player, but I kind of mixed it into how they can progress into the NBA, how their game is portable to the NBA, and what they're doing right now. So I would say what they're doing right now has about 60% to it, and how much it can translate to the next level has about 40% to do with it. So with all that being said, let's start with our honorable mentions. So first off, we're going to start with our honorable mentions. These are a few guys who just did not make the cut of my top 5 scorers in the 2025 draft so far. And those guys include of guys like Jaeger Demon, Jeremiah Fears, Boogie Fland. We're also going to be talking about Ben Seraph and Leah McNeely. To start off with Jeremiah Fears, he's averaging about 16 points per game this season on about 63% true shooting. He's a really solid combo guard who stands at about 6'4", about 180 pounds. And there are a few things that are very intriguing about his game, but he also has a few things that I'm very concerned of that would give me a little bit of hesitance to put him in this top 5 scorers list. Now, I know he has had some pretty big performances this season that could make him almost consensus to some people to put him in the top 5. But for me, when I look at his game and I see a 6'4" guard who is a combo guard who doesn't necessarily create the biggest advantages for the offense, but we're not going to talk about playmaking in this video. We're going to just be talking about scoring. He is very slim, and sometimes his strength and sometimes his first step kind of negates him from really creating that angle or creating that separation when he does get downhill. That's why you see a lot of pull-up mid-range shots. That's why we see a lot of off-ball threes, and that's why we see a lot of floaters. We don't necessarily see him get to the rim as effectively as much as I would like him to at his size. And when I see him struggle against these college level defenders and these college level athletes, I only think at the upper level it's going to be a lot more difficult against 27, 28-year-old men who are more athletic, have better IQ, who are stronger, and it's going to lead to a lot of mid-range shots and a lot of three-point shots that may be a little bit more heavily contested due to the uppage in quality or in the uppage in talent. So when I look at his scoring ability, I almost see a kind of like a Tyrese Halliburton, because Tyrese Halliburton still struggles to get to the rim effectively. We always see maybe he does create that initial step, but he always leans on a floater. He always passes it out, or he deals with or he settles for a mid-range shot. So I would see a lot of Tyrese Halliburton, especially the off-ball ability. I think Jeremiah Fears' off-ball ability is really intriguing, the way he's able to shoot off motion, shoot off the catch, maybe even shoot off the dribble. But his concerns would have me just a little hesitant to put him in my top 5. Up next, we're going to be talking about Boogie Fland. And Boogie Fland, in my opinion, is kind of the opposite of what Jeremiah Fears has done. This season, Boogie Fland's averaging about 15 points on 57% true shooting. And I kind of don't necessarily, in the footage that I have watched from Boogie Fland, there have been a little bit of negatives when I see him play off ball. Sometimes I feel as though he's just standing still off ball, or when he does have the ball in his hand. Now, I do like his first step. I do like how he is able to get downhill. Sometimes I feel like he can be a little bit out of control when he does gather his dribble and go up for layups, but the shooting off the dribble, the tough shot making is there, but the off ball ability is what really holds me back from putting him on this list. Up next, I'm going to be talking about Ben Seraph, and I'm not going to take too long talking about Ben Seraph because he has been somebody I've been a little bit high on, but recently I've kind of taken a step back from him just a little bit because he does create a lot of mid-range looks for himself. He does create a lot of running floaters for himself. He doesn't necessarily take a lot of threes. I would say overseas, that's probably why they just don't have the 3-point volume that they would in the NBA. But he's not necessarily knocking down those mid-range shots. When I see him create these looks, they're not really falling. When I see him get to the rim, it is a little bit contested, and his separation when he does get downhill is a little concerning. But to be 6'6" and have that scoring profile and that ability to play in the pick and roll and have a tight ball handle to get down there, when you see the shot fall, I would give him a little bit more of leeway of putting him on this list, but as of right now, he just would not be able to make it for me. And the last person I want to talk about is Liam McNeely. Liam McNeely is a really good shooter out of UConn. He does play really well off ball. He does show an ability to get downhill, but there are a few things that I do have concerns with. I think his jump shot is just a little slow. His release point is just a little slow. I also feel like it's kind of hard to really explain, but when he gets downhill, I don't necessarily see a fluidity in his dribble to where he can create these advantages. So when he does get downhill, it's kind of like one hand pounding to the basketball or pounding the basketball to the floor when getting downhill. And I feel like if you are in a situation that does not have the spacing that you would like, that could lead to a lot of turnovers. So that's something I would really keep an eye on at the upper level. But other than that, I think he's a very good shooter. I think he's going to fit somewhere pretty flawlessly. But when I look at him getting downhill and the fluidity of his dribble, that does give me some concern. Now, this might be my most controversial part of this list, which is number 5 and maybe even number 4, depending on how people feel about him. But at number 5, I have Derik Queen. And so far this season, Derik Queen's averaging about 17 points per game on 9 rebounds a night. And he's also giving you 65% from inside the arc. So with Derik Queen and how he plays, he stands at about 6'10". He is very fluid with his dribble at the big man position. And he's also very dominant down low to these college bigs. So with his physicality around the rim and his finishing around the rim and his willingness to take 3-pointers. Now, he's only taking 1 a game and he is shooting 12% from 3, but the way he is able to space the floor, not just with his shooting, but with his ability to get downhill, his ability to be a ball handler and a roll man in the pick and roll, I think that is very, very, very important or very valued as a big man. Just the way he is able to dribble through contact, dribble through a lot of traffic and finish, even with his floater game or his touch around the rim or his mid-range game. I mean, if we look at his inside the arc numbers, like I said, it's 65%. I think that's something that's very valuable. And with all these guys that I had on my honorable mentions, I just think his game is a lot more easier than a Boogie Flan would be, or for a Jeremiah Fears, or for a Liam McNeely. I think it's much easier for him to create offense for himself with his dominance around the rim than it would be for a Jeremiah Fears, Boogie Flan, Liam McNeely, or Ben Seraph. So that's something I can depend on a little bit more if I'm looking in this draft and I'm looking for scores and just scores. Now, he is a little short as a center. I think he's 6'9" or 6'10". He's one of those. I know he's not scratching 7 foot, and you would be a little concerned of how that dominance and how that physicality can translate to real NBA centers. But as of right now, I think his play around the rim and his finishing around the rim carries it just a little bit for me to have him at number 5. And right now, I think that touch around the rim can translate a little bit more than Jeremiah Fears' off-ball game or Boogie Flan's on-ball ability to score. I think he can be a lot more dynamic off-ball as a roll man, as a short roll type of guy, as like a running floater type of guy, or just finishing around the rim and being a hell of a rebounder. He had a 20-20 game with, I think, about 6 assists. So he's going to be a dynamic scorer. I think he's going to be pretty damn good. And if you pair him with a ball handler, it's going to make it even more scary. Like if Atlanta gets him, I would love to see him in Atlanta. And I'm probably going to record a mock draft after this. That's probably where I'm going to have him going, not going to lie, unless a team really needs a center. But that's Derik Queen. I have Derik Queen at number 5. All right, these next 4 scorers are really good. Like, obviously they're really good, but these next 4 scores are, I'm kind of pulling hairs, at least from number 2 to number 3 or number 2 to number 4. So when I looked at these 3 guys and I wanted to rank them to where they sit right now and how it can translate to the NBA, it was pretty tough because we have such a high level of talent between these players, and it was tough. Like, just made my decision before I pressed the record button. And at number 4, I have Tre Johnson. And it sucks right now. It sucks right now because I think Tre Johnson is a phenomenal player. And there's a lot of things that he does well offensively for the University of Texas. This season, Tre Johnson is averaging about 20 points per game on about 49% from the field, 44% from three, and 84% from the line on 62% true shooting. And when Tre Johnson became a freshman, there was a lot of things that were really intriguing about him. I definitely did not think we would be able to see the versatility offensively that he's been able to give us so far. Definitely did not think the shooting would translate to the three-point line as much as it did. And when I look at him as a player, he does a lot of things great offensively, whether it's in pick and roll. I've seen him play out of the post. I've seen him be a great pull-up shooter, whether it's inside the arc or outside the arc. He's great in transition, and he has a counter to pretty much everything on the perimeter. We see him play in the pick and roll, whether it's a sidestep or a step back or a hesitation. His change of pace is phenomenal, and he's such a knockdown shooter, which makes it so hard to guard him with the shifty dribbling, because if you give him an inch of space, he's liable to knock down the shot. He's been extremely efficient. So when I look at him as a player, and he's also been phenomenal off ball, whether it's sideline out of bounds plays or just being able to get to the corner and create an open shot for himself off ball. So I look at him and I say, this should translate to the NBA. The pull-up shooting, the off-ball scoring, the scoring with the ball in his hand. And it's so fun to watch. It is extremely fun to watch, because when I see a 19-year-old play out of the post and be so fluid with his footwork out of the post and knock down these mid-range post fadeaways, or be able to play in the pick and roll and pull up in the mid-range or pull up at the three-point line, or be able to play in transition off the catch, that makes his game so much more harder to guard that people don't even understand that. If you're a threat from the three in transition, people are going to have to guard you very closely. And if they're not, you can either attack the closeout, or if you have time to get the shot off, that's also extremely efficient as well. So he's going to have that area of the game almost down packed once he gets to the NBA, and he's going to be able to play off so many players because he's already a skilled off-ball player coming in. So going into the NBA, I'm not worried about that. Now, the thing that I have him and my number 3, which I'm pretty sure you guys know who it's going to be, is the rim pressure. The rim pressure was the separator between him and my number 3. And it's funny because my number 3 isn't the best at creating rim pressure as well, but Tre Johnson does not have the athleticism that I think would translate to the NBA just yet as becoming a self-creating, getting to the rim type of player. You know, there are times where he just struggles to create that separation and really create that, or just create that separation and really have that strength to finish through the contact. So that's something that's been really concerning for me. And I know I brought up Jeremiah Fears' lack of rim pressure as a stand on why he would not be on this list, but I think with Tre Johnson being 6'5" and just having a little bit more polish to his offensive game, he would make it over Jeremiah Fears. So at number 4, I have Tre Johnson. Phenomenal player. I'm not going to lie. He's probably my favorite prospect right now. So this kind of sucks, but shout out to Tre Johnson, man. He's doing phenomenal this season. Ace Bailey is going to be my number 3 player. He's about a 6'10", power forward, combo forward, kind of about 200 pounds. And this is a guy who was projected to be a top 3 pick in this year's draft. And the athleticism, the length, the off-ball ability, and the tough shot making has really made it intriguing for Ace Bailey. And once again, I told you guys in my last part of the episode talking about Tre Johnson, I think the separator between them is because they do have a lot of tough shot making skills. They do have a lot of off ball ability. I think the difference between Tre Johnson's deficiencies of getting downhill and the difference between Ace Bailey's is just the raw athleticism standpoint that I'm going to stand on. And Ace Bailey being 6'10", getting down hill in transition and running in transition and being athletic as he is, and the posture and the size that he has is going to give him the advantage when we talk about how good you can get at getting downhill. Because once again, these guys can be taught a few things that can help them become a better downhill player. I think Ace Bailey Bailey gets the up. I think Ace Bailey gets the benefit of the doubt, knowing that he is 6'10", he has that length, he has that speed, he has that leap, and he has that athleticism that you can lean on that can make you a better downhill player. And to be honest, once again, I've said this before, we can look back at this draft maybe 5 to 7 years down the line and say Ace Bailey was the best scorer to come out of the draft. And I don't think that's something that's crazy. He has all the intangibles to do it. When we look at the tough shot making this year, now he's only shooting about 30% from three, but the willingness of the three-point shooting, the confidence that he has. Now, there are some moments where he can take these ill-advised shots over two defenders just because he is not able to create these easy looks for himself getting downhill, and he doesn't have the necessary decision-making to make these plays off the dribble when he is getting blitzed by two players. But once again, we're talking about scoring. This isn't a full scouting report. That's on me. But when I look at Ace Bailey, I think it is a little bit disappointing that the downhill ability just isn't there. And that's something that I didn't necessarily have that big of a critique on when he was at the high school level, because once again, I didn't necessarily take high school clips as big of a value as I maybe should have. Maybe that's on me, but I think there's something that can be taught with tightening up his dribble a little bit. That's something I think Tre Johnson has just a little bit of an edge on when he's getting downhill. I think Tre Johnson has maybe a tighter dribble than Ace Bailey as of right now. But I think, once again, Ace Bailey can have something like that be taught. I think he has the speed, the first step, the athleticism, and he can build the strength to become a dominant downhill player. And once you add that to the three-point shooting and the off-ball motion, he's going to be a really hard player to stop. Like, I've seen a lot of Michael Porter Jr., and I don't hate that. I definitely think he's a better shooter than a Jabari Smith. I think the athleticism could be comparable. And then I definitely think he's a lot more athletic than Michael Porter Jr. So those two comps have been understandable. I can see it. But once again, he does not have the I think he's a better shooter than Jabari Smith, and I think he's a better athlete than Michael Porter Jr. post-injury. I can understand where people are coming from. High school to college, Michael Porter Jr. was a different athlete, and if he would have kept that athleticism, he would have been a better player. But I think Ace Bailey right now is a little bit more athletic than a Michael Porter Jr. or a Jabari Smith, to where Ace Bailey, once he puts all that stuff together, I'd be a little bit more confident in having him higher than my number two. But I think my number two just has a mixture of the off-ball play and the rim pressure that Tre Johnson and Ace Bailey just don't have. Now, Kasparas Jakucionis this season has been an excellent pick and roll threat. I mean, I think that's something that you can see off of his game almost immediately, the way he's able to create that burst off the dribble and have such a great angle when he does get downhill, and his body control when he does get around the rim. That helps him finish through contact and get and ones pretty frequently. This season, Kasparas Jakucionis is averaging about 16 points per game on about 49, 41, 86 splits on about 66% true shooting. And whether it's dribble handoffs, pick and rolls, attacking closeouts, he's able to get to the rim, and he's able to put the ball at such a great angle for it to finish around the rim. And that's something that's extremely impressive. And that's the separator between him, Ace Bailey, and Tre Johnson, because I told you guys earlier in the episode that these are the small things that I was going to be critiquing when we're talking about these three players, because I believe Kasparas Jakucionis has that rim pressure that Ace Bailey and Tre Johnson just don't have yet. And I'm not saying that that's never going to come. There's a world where those two guys can be put in the perfect situation to where they can become these excellent rim finishers, or they can put a high level of rim pressure on the rim consistently. But I think Kasparas Jakucionis provides it at this moment to where it could be him above those two players. And not only that, he's also great off ball, which makes the separator even bigger in my opinion, because he has a will of shot making, whether it's coming off screens or shooting off the dribble or just being a spot up shooter, that once again, it just adds to the separator between these three guys. Once again, I think Ace Bailey in a vacuum can become the best scorer out of these five players. But as of right now, to what I also think can translate to the NBA, Kasparas Jakucionis is probably more polished than these two players. And by the way, I've said this guy's name like differently twice already. So for those who maybe can help me pronounce his name a little bit better, I would appreciate it. And at number one, I'm pretty sure you guys all knew this, but I'm just going to say it anyway. I have Dylan Harper at number one. I believe that the volume, the tight handle in the in-between game has been phenomenal this season. This season, he's giving you about 22 points per game on about 62% true shooting, and he's at about 52, 37, 75 splits. And once again, with the volume that he's able to create, and once again, this is not the best roster around him and Ace Bailey, but he is going to take a lot of attention defensively, and I think that's further setting him up to whatever situation he goes to, because I'm under the impression that he's going to be a top 2 pick this season. So whatever team he's going to go to is probably going to have not as much on-ball creator, so he's going to get a lot of attention on defenses. That's probably going to be defenses' number one assignment when going up against him. So the fact that he's able to have this great in-between game and to have this tight dribble in traffic and be able to have these crafty finishes around bigger players, and he shoots the ball pretty well. He's also shooting 60% inside the arc, which is phenomenal for a 6'6" guard. So these small things that Dylan Harper has to his game, I think, are more put together, and he does it at a higher volume than anybody else on this list. So Dylan Harper being the number one scorer, I've talked about Dylan Harper a lot so far, so I'm not really going to dive too deep into his game, but I think Dylan Harper's been phenomenal, and I think his ceiling can be an all-NBA type of player and a lead guard for a really good team as a scorer and potentially as a playmaker. So Dylan Harper being number one, that's my list. And there are a few people I did not mention. Shout out to Khan Knipple. Also, shout out to Cooper Flagg. I did not necessarily think he would be in my top 5. I think you can make the argument that he's a better scorer than Derik Queen, but we'll save that for my top 5 defenders video. So, ladies and gentlemen, these have been my top 5 scorers for the 2025 NBA draft. If you guys like this type of content, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Last season, I also did a big board for my top point guard prospects for the 2024 NBA draft. I'm going to be doing that probably later in the year. I did a lot of content leading up to the NBA draft. This was when I first started YouTube, and my draft content was really doing pretty well. So I'm going to be continuing to do that, but this year I'm going to do lead guards, I'm going to do wings, and I'm going to do bigs. So it's going to be point guards, own big board, shooting guards and small forwards, own video, and then power forwards and centers, own video. I'm also going to be doing my top 5 defenders in this year's draft, and probably as more of the scouting process goes along, probably going to be moving it into top 10. So I have a lot of plans. The mock drafts are still going to become a thing. I just wanted to give what's that website called, Fanspo. I wanted to give Fanspo a little bit more time to get all of the prospects in, because when I do these mock drafts, I see some prospects that are just not in it. So I'm going to give them some time to really put that together. Other than that, man, I appreciate everybody watching. We just hit 1,000 subscribers. So if you guys like this type of content, you guys like consistent basketball talk, be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications so you guys know when I drop videos on this channel. We are going to try and move a little bit towards uploading every other day instead of uploading every day. I know if you guys watch me on the Hoop Talk podcast, I say that I upload every day, which I have been doing recently for over the past few months, but now that we're kind of monetized, I want to add a little bit more production quality to my channel. So it's going to take me like every other day to be able to edit effectively and make better edits. Right now, I'm still learning to become a better editor. So it's going to take some time. I'm also doing a whole rebranding of the channel. So all this stuff is going to take time, but it's going to be worth it when we get that 100,000 subscriber plaque, which probably isn't way farther in the future. So if you guys like this type of content, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'm out. Peace.